Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, although a bit of a surprise because, as has been said, Caroline was supposed to be here. But unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, there is a debate on energy prices in the House of Commons today, so she's asked me to fill in for her this morning. Energy policy and energy prices and the dominance of the big six energy companies have dominated the political landscape over the last 2 years and have moved up to the top of the political agenda since Ed Miliband's speech to Labour Party conference in September. In fact, it's been a bit of a roller coaster being in this team since then. And in that speech, Ed pledged that a Labour government would freeze electricity and gas prices for 20 months, allowing time to reform the energy market in order to reintroduce competition, restore trust, and set up a new, tougher energy watchdog. After those 20 months have elapsed, and after our energy market reforms have been implemented, our long-term drive will not be shifted. We possess a relentless focus on the UK's economy's transition from a carbon-intensive model to a low-carbon one. Indeed, the price freeze and reform of the energy market is a vital step towards generating investment in low-carbon technologies. I want to talk to you today about Labour's price freeze and our energy market reforms, and why they are not only good for consumers, but good also for investment in low-carbon energy, good for business and good for green jobs. Labour's energy price freeze and market reforms are not impediments to investment in low-carbon technologies. They are absolutely crucial to generating that investment. By rebuilding trust in the market and providing greater investor certainty, the price freeze and market reforms will support investment. What any investor needs isn't short-term returns based on overcharging, but long-term certainty on returns. That is why we are committed to a 2030 power sector decarbonisation target, supported by the Committee on Climate Change, which is what the industry has been calling for. We will also stick with the system of contracts for difference, which guarantees investors a return on their investment. Energy market reform is vital for delivering investment in renewable energy, because it is crucial to regaining public trust in the energy market. We need that trust back because we have to take the public with us on this. Long-term energy policy relies on public engagement and public consensus. They're the ones who will be paying for energy, whether it's fossil fuels or offshore wind. And if people don't have trust in the energy market, they won't improve energy efficiency or install smart meters in their homes or do any of the things we need them to do in order to make this transition. Reforming the market and restoring trust is crucial, because otherwise people will wrongly blame renewable energy for driving up bills. Investment in low-carbon energy is contingent on the public believing the market is fair. Your business are therefore reliant on trust on the energy market. Without that public trust, we won't get consent for these big changes. Energy market reform is critical if we are to dispel the myth currently disseminated by this government that policies to support new renewables are responsible for the increase in consumer energy bills. This is despite the fact that findings by DEC has shown that energy prices are rising because of the rising cost in wholesale gas prices, which soared by 65% from February 2004 to January 2011. Adding around £290 to the typical household bill. This government, under pressure from Tory backbenchers, has agreed to a review on green levies, even though they admit they are not what is driving up the cost of energy bills. The price freeze that we are proposing is a temporary measure for 20 months, during which time we will carry out our reforms. This time frame is based on the Utilities Act of 2000, which took 10 months to complete. So we're allowing ourselves twice as long to make sure we get proper engagement with stakeholders and effective implementation. The current market structure is bad for investment. It contributes to low levels of liquidity. If most energy is bought and sold privately, there is much less need to trade in the open market, which reduces the availability of products for other market participants or potential market participants who cannot access these bilateral deals. As a result, independent generators tell us that they find it difficult to secure long-term deals to sell their generation, which in turn inhibits future generation. Our proposals, we believe, are good for investment. We will create an open pool where generators will be required to sell all the power that they generate onto an open market, and all suppliers will have to buy it from there too. That would do two very important things. It would put a break between generation and supply, and it would result in much greater volumes being traded openly. Indeed, there is one reason why the markets in other countries where this more exchange-based trading system, such as Nord Pool, are more liquid, more transparent, and have more market participants. I believe that such a market would be more attractive to invest in, particularly for independent generators or companies wishing to enter the supply market. One estimate from the London Energy Brokers Association suggested that 6% of the power that is produced in this country is actually traded on the market, just 6%. A pool would open up that market and allow anyone to compete on price. Our energy market reforms would separate power generation from supply, which will keep prices down and help other firms that might want to enter the market and offer lower prices but can't, who want to offer lower prices but can't because there isn't enough power available to actually buy. And it is those other firms where the majority of investment in renewables is happening. Our reforms will encourage smaller suppliers and therefore boost investment in low-carbon energy generation. The price freeze, the market reforms, and the establishment of a new regulator are absolutely crucial to investment. We need a market that consumers trust, and so do you. The final part of our reform package relates to setting up a new, tougher energy watchdog. Ofgem isn't fit for purpose and has consistently failed to protect consumers. It takes too long to punish suppliers when they have done wrong, and it is too often unwilling to take the forceful action necessary to keep the market in check. We would create a new regulator with tough new powers and new leadership to stand up for consumers. This new regulator would carry on doing much of the work that Ofgem already does, but with one significant difference. The new regulator would have the duty, in statute, to monitor wholesale and retail energy prices, and the power to force energy companies to pass on reductions and in wholesale costs to consumers. Very different than what happens now. In addition to this new power, the new regulator would cover off-grid customers and extend protections to small businesses. It would also have powers of collective redress and the power to force energy companies to make payments in compensation to consumers who'd been ripped off. This new regulator would also be able to put requirements on energy companies as part of their licence conditions. So under our plans, this would include protections for consumers against the profiteering and a requirement to pass on reductions in wholesale costs as fully and as quickly as possible. The transition to a low-carbon economy will, of course, not be a straightforward one. There will inevitably be costs involved, as inherent in the long-term shift. But that transition is inevitable. And if we are to make this change a success, and we have no alternative other than success, we must start now, because the costs of doing nothing are incalculable. Humans have lived and thrived under many climatic conditions. But the truth of the matter is that we have made large, fixed investments in specific locations expecting certain conditions. If we do nothing, as the climate changes, those investment decisions may become unviable, and the costs of adapting will be wide-ranging and substantial. We want all energy firms, including the Big Six, to be successful, so they can invest their profits in future capacity. But whilst the Big Six's profits have gone up over the last 3 years, investment in clean energy has plummeted. So profits aren't being linked to investment. Indeed, the energy companies have been making the highest profits, who are making the highest profits, are actually investing the least in new plants, but paying the highest dividends. The transition to a low-carbon economy provides a great opportunity for British business, and it reminds me of a story of the shoe salesman in Africa. 2 shoe salesmen are sent to Africa to see if there's a market for their product. The first salesman sends back a telegraph saying, "Disaster, terrible business opportunity, no one wears shoes." The second salesman sends a telegraph back saying, "Brilliant, fantastic business opportunity, no one wears shoes." So the opportunity that stands ahead of us today is long-term and sustainable economic growth that is built on innovation, green jobs, and a low-carbon economy. And in order to seize that opportunity, we need to take the right long-term decisions today. The bulk of low-carbon investment will have to come from the private sector, which is why we need the 2030 decarbonisation target now. As in the introduction was said, I've only been a shadow energy and climate change minister for a month, but barely a meeting has gone by without someone, either in the renewable sector or in other businesses, telling me how much confidence, clarity and certainty a 2030 target would provide. We have supported that target in opposition, and we will support it in government. We are the only party to have supported the 2030 decarb target in the energy bill, and we will legislate for it in government. That is the certainty that investors seek, and it's the certainty that they will get from a Labour government. When the amendment to set a 2030 target to decarbonise electricity generation was voted on in the House of Commons in June, the government's majority was just 23. In the Lords last month, it was just 14. And you heard from Ed Davey yesterday, and I do have some sympathy for the Secretary of State, as energy policy is more and more being directed from a panicked Downing Street. Despite a decarbonisation target being official party policy, a majority of Liberal Democrats voted against the amendment to introduce one. And at the evidence session of the energy bill, I asked the Energy Secretary if he agreed with his party's position of supporting a decarbonisation target. And he said he did, but he was a part of a coalition government. This is not the clear, unambiguous messaging the industry needs. In the annual energy statement in Parliament last week, the Secretary of State couldn't even tell the Commons which green levies are under review. If he doesn't know, won't say, or is not allowed to say, how can he expect business to invest? And it's this lack of clarity, stemming from a lack of a decarbonisation target, that is having a damaging effect on investment in clean energy. In fact, analysis from Bloomberg New Energy Finance shows that a combination of dithering, meddling, and a relentless focus on the short term has seen investment in clean energy fall from £7.2 billion in 2009 to £3 billion last year, and this year it's expected to be down to £1.9 billion. Labour firmly rejects the view that action on climate change is a threat to prosperity and growth, a luxury to tend to only in the boom years. It is with great regret to watch the cross-party consensus we had before the 2010 election crumble. Just 5 MPs voted against the 2008 Climate Change Act. But today, the government is pandering to its sceptic and Little Englander wing. I want to be entirely clear here today that it was not the Labour Party that broke this consensus. we remain 100% committed to combating catastrophic climate change via a transition to low-carbon technologies and long-term sustainable growth through green jobs. The transition to a low-carbon economy is an enormous opportunity for Britain's economy. The alternative is to remain hostage to unpredictable yet ever-rising global prices for fossil fuels. According to the government's own figures, electricity prices in the UK last year, excluding taxes, were the 6th highest in the EU 15, the 3rd highest in the G7, and nearly 20% above the EU 15 and G7 average. Energy bills are the 2nd highest cost businesses face, and ever higher prices cost jobs and deter investment. Just last month, Tata Chemicals shut its soda ash factory with the loss of some 220 jobs because of the high and rising gas prices. That factory in Cheshire had been there since 1874. The new renewable industry currently supports some 110,000 jobs, and across the supply chain could support 400,000 by 2020. In 2012, the CBI estimated that nearly 1/3 of the insufficient number of jobs being created in the UK came in the green sector. Yet due to chronic indecision, the government is scaring off investment in an industry that is worth some £3.2 trillion. A Labour government will provide these assurances by sending the unambiguous message to investors that they can have the confidence to make long-term investments. We will legislate to enable the Green Investment Bank to borrow, an essential if the Green Investment Bank is to succeed. The time for change isn't, as the government suggests, when the budget deficit is cleared. It is now, when the economy is still struggling and interest rates are still low, when the investment won't crowd out other investment and can kickstart the economy through green jobs and innovation. Technology firms need access to funding. Without promising technologies which could lead to major emissions reductions, it will not make it further than the design board. A Labour government would therefore make this change. We will also set up an energy security board to ensure energy security, identify our energy needs and secure investment for the future. At the moment, no single institution has responsibility for establishing what our future energy capacity needs are and developing a strategy to meet those needs. We believe that an energy security board would provide this crucial function to act as an infrastructure planner with the strategic direction set by the Secretary of State on a long-term basis. In every area of energy policy, we will set a clear direction for investors, as that is the only way to garner the investment that is so crucial to our transition to a low-carbon economy. Offshore wind is one area in which Britain could be at the forefront of a low-carbon industry that could create thousands of jobs. Britain is the windiest country in Europe, something I am reminded of nearly every day, living as I do just a few hundred yards from the Sunderland coast. We need to develop a manufacturing base in addition to installation and maintenance, which would allow us not only to become a leader in offshore wind, but would give us a fantastic export market. It is the uncertainty emanating from all areas of the government which is eroding investor confidence, leading to firms such as Vestas, Siemens and Alstom delaying or cancelling wind farm facilities in the UK, leading to the loss of jobs before they've even been created. Labour in opposition is taking a far more joined-up approach. Caroline Flint is working with Ed Balls and Chuka Ramuna on industrial strategy, infrastructure and skills for the future. Joining up energy, economic and industrial policy is a key to the success. To achieve energy revolution, we want and we need an active industrial strategy. And there are 5 components to this. The first is unlocking private investment. We need to unlock perhaps as much as £200 billion in the next decade by providing clarity and confidence in the future of low carbon technologies. That is why we're setting out our energy market reforms and why we are so clear in our commitment to a 2030 decarbonisation target. The second is better public procurement. We need better procurement for green growth, and that means we must be smarter with the money we spend. For example, targeting the money we already allocate to social housing towards more energy efficient homes, which would help create a supply chain for energy efficiency providers and save tenants hundreds of pounds in energy bills. The third is a strategy for skills for a low carbon economy. We need a skills strategy that provides the skills that a low carbon economy needs. That means working with industry to ensure that the right skills are being produced, but also ensuring that businesses themselves have their own in-house training facilities. The fourth is a rebalanced economy, supporting growth in our regions and encouraging manufacturing. We must look to areas that could become hubs for new green industries. There are areas in the country, many of them old manufacturing centres like Yorkshire and the Humber or the North East where I'm from, which possess existing infrastructure and skills that can be adapted to support low carbon technologies. And indeed, if the trail's on the news today about what's likely to happen in the shipyards in Govan and the South, there are skills there that can be utilised in infrastructure. Instead of standing by and hoping for investment, we would use the Green Investment Bank to crowd in investment and bring down interest rates, to revitalise these areas and boost green technologies. And finally, the fifth component is engaging the public and communities. The transition to low carbon will take us from a centralised supply based on fossil fuels to a decentralised one based on renewable energy. We must empower councils and community groups to allow them to get on with improving their energy efficiency and generating their own power. I hope I've set out in the clearest terms how Labour's price freeze and market reforms are crucial to unlocking private investment by restoring public trust in the energy market through a 2030 decarbonisation target, greater powers for the Green Investment Bank and the creation of an Energy Security Board. Labour will provide the certainty investors seek, and we are focused on taking a more holistic approach to our energy industrial strategy to make the most of opportunities that lie ahead. The time to make the transition is now to a low-carbon economy, paving the way for a sustainable recovery built on low-carbon technologies and green jobs. There is a Greens arms race going on, and the UK is in danger of falling behind. Labour will not let that happen. We're committed to putting the right policies in place to respond to the new economic demands of the low-carbon era. Thank you.